This is Joe Carpenter. Today is March 29th, 2022, and I'm interviewing Juan Soto for the first time. This interview is taking place at the University Hall, University of Texas at Arlington campus. This interview is sponsored by the College of Liberal Arts and is part of the Maverick Veterans Voices Project. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being willing to participate.
My pleasure.
Where are you from originally, and what can you tell me about your growing up?
Originally born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, so not too far from here. Spent my whole first 18 years of my life there. Went to, I branched out during middle school and started, I took, French, and which ended up taking me to a different high school than I was supposed to be in, like, for my region. That's where I met my girlfriend at the time that turned into my wife, and we've been married for 23 years since. So I was a young kid and mistook or misunderstood what a romantic language was, thinking it was had to do with romance. So I was gonna get the ladies by doing so, not knowing that it's true roots are in it's Roman, less than romance and more. So I took French for 6 or 7 years, middle school and high school, and like I said, that took me to the high school where I eventually met my spouse. So from then on, it's military, and went to the Army, and since then took me here to Arlington. I've been here since.
So where did you go to high school?
Breckenridge High School. It's near downtown San Antonio.
Were any of your family members in the military?
No. Well, not my immediate family. So I had some cousins that had deployed, that were in the first Iraq conflict, but no one else that I knew of.
Mm-hmm. So how did you become interested in the military?
For me, it was an alternative to what I thought, because I'm first gen, so okay. I didn't know any better. It was an alternative to the Monday through Friday grind of school. I thought college was going to be the same. I wanted something to do that was going to be meaningful. So I'm like, I can either go to school or or join the military. So I just took that as a obvious, what would have been at the time an obvious, good choice for me, not knowing that, in college I could just set my own schedules and not done the Monday through Friday grind.
Right.
But it turned out for the better.
What do you mean first gen?
So mother and father, didn't go to college.
See?
Yeah. So
okay.
So
what was your branch and specialty in the military?
I was in communications. So 31 Romeo, I believe it's changed since then. So it's radio transmission systems operator. It's basically setting up cell towers. So before there was cells, we're late 90s. So
right.
But yeah.
So and that was in the Army, is that correct?
It was in the Army, yes.
And where'd you go for training, and what can you tell me about that experience?
Well, basic training was Fort Jackson, and my AIT for my eventual position was in Fort Gordon, Georgia. Mm-hmm. So it was a pleasant experience. I mean, It's so long ago I can give you the details. That there's very few things I remember from back then, but I was a young pup, so I'm sure I got into plenty of mischief.
Right. And what was your first assignment after training?
First assignment was Korea.
Oh, really?
From 99 to 2000, late 2000, I was in Korea. So that was a very eye-opening experience for me. Somebody that I had never been on a flight before joined the military. I'd never left the state of Texas. I very rarely, traversed outside the borders of what it was, Bexar County and San Antonio. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a very, very different, very, very much of a change of pace for me.
And were you married at the time?
I was not. I left, so I shipped out to basic 98, like August 98. So from 98 to 2000, and my girlfriend, my serious girlfriend at the time, she was having some personal issues in her own, and my parents were kind enough to let her, move in. Which is, I would not let my daughter follow in my footsteps,
Right.
but so yeah, she was living with us, and I left, and I thought she was going to go to school and follow her dreams of being a nurse. So later on, I find out when I was like halfway through AIT that she also joined. So she was in the Army to be a combat medic.
Really?
Yeah.
So you didn't know that she was enlisting?
No, I did not know. It was a surprise.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so she served as well. Did she serve with you at any time?
We did. We were lucky enough to both get stationed at Fort Hood here in Texas. And shortly after, we were blessed with a child, and women have the option, or had the option, I don't know if it's still like that, to terminate their enlistment, due to pregnancy. So she was able to do so, and I think she was in for a little under 2 years when she got out.
I see. And so what were your duties, and did you feel adequately prepared for those duties once you were deployed?
So it's setting up the equipment, just with Signal you work remote, mostly, so you're out there just, becoming the relays for, so it's setting up the equipment and then just making sure that the signal stays up, so maintaining it. I felt adequately capable of doing so. It's the hardest part of the job was probably driving in the grounding rods. That there were these huge spikes, and we would often be in like really rocky terrain, and you'd have to drive them in so far. That was probably the one thing I remember being the most difficult. But you were in your shelter that had electricity, so we were able to get out of the elements and stay in a nice warm. Even though it was reduced, confined in a small, probably 4x5, area, but it was just
Better than a tent.
It was better than a tent, and like I said, I had electricity, and so I had access to heat and cool, and
Right.
a little TV to keep me company.
So other than Korea, were you assigned anywhere else overseas?
I was not. I came to Fort Hood and served the rest of my time there. I got out shortly before all the deployments happened. I was in during 9/11. So, and after that, it was just a bunch of people running around our companies and divisions getting all reconfigured. So people that I had been with. Through most of my time there, suddenly they were, getting shipped to a different company, and then so it was a chaotic time.
Yeah. So Fort Hood was close to home. So how did that work for you? Was it good to have your family nearby? And
It was. I hadn't established the necessary skills to traverse, because I was never much of a long distance driver. So back then, driving 2 hours from Fort Hood to San Antonio was a grind.
Oh, really?
Like, how little did I know?
Right.
I drive all over the country now, but no, it was good. It was good. I'm sure younger me should have visited mom way more often. I still have my mother, but I just wished I would have, taken the time to be. More, since I was so close, just be more actively involved in their lives. I did spend many times where, I wouldn't speak with them for several months.
Sure.
So foreign to me now.
Right.
Yeah.
So while you served, did you lose anyone close to you?
I did not. No, like I said, I wasn't. I had gotten out right before all the deployments. So and social media wasn't a big thing back then or
Right.
at all.
Right.
So I didn't get to follow up with anybody that probably did get, get sent overseas to Afghanistan and Iraq. So
And how long did you serve altogether?
mine would have been right at 4 years. I did from 98 August to basically 2002 August.
What was your rank when you left the service?
I was a specialist. I was E4.
Okay. Were you awarded any medals or citations?
I was not. Young me just did barely enough, just to get by, clock in, clock out type. I didn't develop that, that hunger to do more than what was required of me until later in life.
And I think that's a misperception of the military, is that you do have the ability to do that, and if you want to.
Yeah.
Are there any specific people or circumstances that you remember, maybe things that make you laugh?
Not so much. Like it would be the one person I was really, really good friends with. It would be difficult because, and you could probably cut it later, but yeah, the one really close person I had, professionally he was great, personally he was great. His private life was a mess. So it's one of those deals.
Sure.
I do remember, just being in shock, and it's like, and now how would you differentiate between like the person that at work and the person that they are at home? And like, I've never seen that side of a person like that. So,
That's interesting.
yeah, it was a pretty mellow time for me. I didn't think those 4 years spent that anything. I mean, obviously 9/11 was the big factor in that, but we had it. It didn't affect me that much personally, So
Now, what date did you get out?
I got out August of 2002. So probably with my ETS or with my leave, I probably left like a month before. So probably sometime in July.
So just a little less than a year after 9/11 then.
Yeah. A little less than a year after 9/11, and my daughter was born April of 2001, so she was still, a little over a year by the time I got out.
Why did you decide to get out rather than staying in?
Because of my daughter.
Just because of your daughter?
Yeah,
right?
it was being a new dad, and the novelty hadn't worn off of, the baby, and it was just all baby all the time, so I decided to get out. I did, however, re-enlist after I'd gotten out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a recruiter came knocking at my door, and that new dad period had worn off, and I was like, I think I'm ready to go back into it, and I was really motivated at the time then. So yeah, that took me back. I did change my MOSs too, but I got injured before I was able to.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And was there anyone that you served with that influenced you?
I'm sure they all had an impact. My whole time in the military, in the Army, during that period, definitely affected my outlook on my day-to-day, living. Just being more orderly, just having some structure. The selling points that they give you, when
Sure.
you're, some kid from the hood. So.
Right.
But individually, I had some friends that I had, especially when I was in Fort Hood. But it was, I guess the biggest thing I would say, because it's so different, you meet a bunch of different people when you're in the military and the Army, is just having friend groups that come from different walks of life.
Yeah.
So it's a very eclectic group of people that I hung out with.
Right. So what reminds you of your service? Anything like music or smells or sounds or?
Yeah, of course. I still listen to pretty frequently, not all the time. Couple of the albums that I would listen to when I was in Korea. So listening to them takes me back to that time, and takes me back to the cold and the wet.
Yeah.
So it just as far as sounds, and other than that, it's because I'm still actively involved with veterans.
Right.
You know, we do share war stories, or even non-conflict stories, just the day-to-day grind. So that takes me back a little bit.
Right. Do you remain in contact with anybody that you served with?
I did for a while. I had a friend of mine that we were both in Korea, and we both got shipped to Fort Hood. We were different battalions at the time. But we drove back, and at the same time, so we went from Korea to California to Texas. So when I left Texas to join the military, gas was 99 cents.
Right.
You know, so when we came back 18 months later or whatever it was, we went to California, and gas was very expensive.
Right.
So while I was just hyping up Texas, you know, gas is going to be so much cheaper, you'll be so happy. We get to El Paso, and it's still expensive, you know, still like $1.50 something. I'm like, well, when we get to San Antonio, and no, that wasn't the case. You know, gas had gone up everywhere. Texas wasn't immune.
Right.
Yeah, we kept in touch for several years. He eventually started dating a friend that joined with my wife, so they were friends, and then, but that relationship didn't last, and then we kind of just drifted apart. I think he ended up joining the FBI. So, yeah.
So, are you involved in any veterans organizations?
No, I do work with veterans on campus.
Right.
So that's probably the extent of it. I'm not part of any other, you know, local or national veterans groups. I guess the PVA might be. You can consider that, but once you go to the VA, they almost grab everybody.
Right.
So it's very passive. You know, my commitment to them. But.
So you mentioned working with veterans. Let's talk about how you got to that point. So when you got out, what did you do in civilian life? What was your first job?
My first job was installing satellites. I felt like a natural progression from what I was doing when I was in the military in my 4 years, and it was like like on the job accident I had. That's what stopped me working there, and me continuing my re-enlistment to the
right.
So, but that was fun. I do remember just having my own company vehicle, because I was in the country back then, south of San Antonio, so I was just driving around. I was working on my own schedule, and it was rewarding, other than when I had to like crawl underneath houses and mess with bugs. I'm not a big bug guy.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, I'm not either. So you mentioned your accident. Is this the accident that led you to using a wheelchair?
Yes. Yeah, I'm an impeccable driving record, but it's really good. I got like 2 speeding tickets and 1 accident. Obviously, I'm 0 for 1 with the accident,
right.
But I'm still alive, so
right.
Nothing much. I can't complain too much about that. But yeah, not even a fender bender. So if I were to get into a fender bender, I don't think I'd know what to do. Like, who do I call?
So tell me a little bit more about that. What happened?
So it was just a freak, it's an accident. It wasn't no alcohol involved, no other vehicle. It was just a single vehicle accident. I was out in the country. there are some, luckily enough, because you're out there in the country, those little county roads, you never know who might pass by there. There were some bystanders that were able to, I guess drag me out and call for, assistance. So that was my only helicopter ride that I don't remember happened.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, my time in the military, I didn't get to get in on any aircrafts.
Right.
Yeah.
But so this accident led you to your first helicopter ride,
Correct. Yeah.
and you don't even remember.
Don't even remember it. I remember the bill afterwards.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
Well, were you in college at that time?
I had just started. Yes. So I was I just completed my first semester of community college.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And are you still in the Killeen area, or where were you at this time?
No, I was back in San Antonio then.
Okay.
So I had probably worked installing satellites for about maybe a little over a year.
Mm.
And I felt that, I needed a change in my life. So I'm like, well, I'm going to try college. And it was going quite smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And so you were working and going to college at the time that this accident occurred, right?
I was. Like I said, I'm first gen, so I didn't know that you could make your own schedule and still be able to work and go to school at the same time.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of juggling that I could do. And it came easy for me at first, with the exception of math, which I eventually aced. But when I was, being removed from this classroom for over 4 years, you tend to forget things.
Sure.
So, you test, you take your TSIs and your entrance exams, and you find out you need remedial math. I'm like, oh crap, so.
Right.
I took care of that, and nothing's really held me back since.
Right.
I did have the accident, but
Right.
Within a couple of weeks, I was back in the classroom.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that because you and I talked about that offline. So I wanted to get to that because you had said that you had the accident, and obviously it was a serious injury. Mm-hmm. You were married at the time. Your father at the time. All of those things. You're going to school. How did this accident change your life?
Going up steps at first. It was.
Yeah.
We really didn't. We had to make modifications to the house and your living situation, but we just kind of shifted as a family. What it is that we were going to be able to do and not do, and so and we've never really focused on the things that we can't do, because there's been so many things that we can do, as an individual, as a couple, as a family with my daughter. So school at the time, and because of the benefits, it was a second source of income, and then once I couldn't work, that was my only source of income. So I decided, okay, I'm not going to, because of the outlook, they're like, you're never going to walk again. I'm like, okay, fine. But then they tell you that, and then they also tell you, well, let's do some intensive rehab. I'm like, well, my priorities right now at the time are my family. So I would do the rehab, but not as intensely as I should have done. So I would have just gone once or twice a week, or even less, and then I just really focused on school, because that's what was paying the bills back then. Right. So we did that, and I completed my associates in 2 years. By then our life had normalized, and we were, we had finally moved out. I guess we were living with her sister at the time, so we took care of living together, and we got our own place in San Antonio, and that was first of, I guess, the fourth house now. So wish we wouldn't have got rid of any of them, but.
Right. Your wife, you mentioned, handled the situation very well.
She did. She's gone above and beyond the in sickness and in health part. She's a natural caretaker. she's been the greatest. But yeah, I can't speak highly enough of her. She's a freaking saint.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. That's a good kind of person to be married to, a saint.
She is, yeah. It's been great. I got no complaints. I got no complaints. She's, like I said, with her being such a, just a natural caretaker. She does love kids, and she does love like big groups, or just a large family dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about the only regret, is that. We had our daughter young before I got injured, and we haven't been able to conceive since, but maybe it was due to that. Maybe, some people live their whole lives and then get lucky at the end and have their miracle child late. Maybe we'd had it early, so that's how I justify it in my head, like
Sure.
maybe she was my miracle baby early on, and I wasn't some super fertile stud early on, so, but yeah, now that we're older, the nieces and nephews, they're starting to have kids, so
Right.
that's how she gets her kicks from taking care of them. Plus, it's always better to be the grandparent anyways and the parent, you get to spoil them like crazy and then
Right.
send them on their way.
Now, did she go back to school?
She did. She was going at the same time I was, so going back to the whole caretaker aspect, she just
Right.
wanted to be like near me and by me the whole time. So whatever classes I was taking, she would take, and then eventually we, our educational paths shifted, and she went on to do her stuff. I kept doing my stuff, but after about 18 months, 2 years maybe, I was completely self-sufficient. So it was just like, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, and then we'll see who gets to their goals first.
Right.
Yeah.
So going back to the injury, you said that 2 weeks after you were back in school and...
About there, yeah. So December 22nd. So I'm sure it was a really shitty Christmas for everybody else but myself. But yeah, because I'm pretty sure I was out of it. And so that was December 22nd. I'm assuming that our spring started somewhere around mid-January, like it does everywhere else. So yeah, it was less than a month before I was back at it.
Now, how did you deal with that emotionally? I mean, that has to be a pretty heavy shock to realize that you're not going to walk again. How did you deal with that emotionally, and how did you recover quickly enough to get back on with your life?
I probably suppressed the hell out of it, to be honest. I was being strong for my mother. My mother's super emotional and stuff like that. Being strong for my wife. So I didn't, like I said, I'd never gone through like a blue period or anything like that. Like I would expect somebody to in
Sure.
my situation. It was more just focus on and redirect my attention to what's necessary for myself and my family at the time. So for me, it was school, and I just I dug deep and really focused on that, and that was going well. Or it pretty much went well the whole way. I don't think I had my first bad grade until I got into my 4-year. Until I got here to UTA. So yeah, it was pretty simple. And so when they released me, I was at I think at the time it was called Brooke Army Medical Center. I know they've gone through different, but it's one of those like trauma wards, and so I went there, the whole surgery thing, and when they released me, they just, it's like when anybody gets released from the hospital, they have a checklist of items that you can accomplish before they do so, and that was probably my first goal. It's just let's get through these checkpoints, and they'll let me go on my way. So when they finally did, they sent me home in this really heavy hospital chair. I was like, if you've seen those hospital chairs, they're like all chromed out with big old rubber tires, and things probably weigh like 65, 70 pounds. So it was like another tip to the cat for my wife. She was, loading that thing in and out of the car. I believe we had we've gone through so many cars, but I think that was a SUV, like a Jeep Wrangler or something like that. So she would, hauling the chair in, hauling the chair out. I was still building up my strength to be able to transfer and shift and move, and so yeah, eventually complications arose from not being being ignorant of my new life, my new normal. So I had a skin breakdown on my bum from that, and I'm like, didn't know what it was, at the time. And it was just like a pressure ulcer, like if you have pressure on, you're constantly sitting, and I knew it was something to be be concerned about. So eventually I went back to the doctor, and they're like, okay. And then I get hooked up with the VA. Then, and since that's about 03. And since then I've been with the VA, and they've taken, good care of me. Sometimes it takes longer, but for all my spinal cord issue needs, they've been really, really helpful. Equipment and all that stuff, and just general knowledge about what it is, to have this injury and what to expect, and so, and I passed it forward, and helped others, like they still constantly reach out to me, like to mentor somebody that's been newly injured, and so I'll do that from time to time when time permits.
Right. How long did it take that pressure ulcer to heal? So those can be pretty.
Yeah, it was probably like 6 months. We caught it early, but it was still a concern. Eventually, they're like, well, get you special cushion, do all this stuff, and get you a right chair that weighs the third the weight of this monstrosity.
Right.
And then now that you're in the system, let's get you hooked up with some occupational therapy and rehabilitative therapy. So then, part of the rehab through the VA was sports. And so that's how I got involved with sports, and been doing it ever since.
So how did you, backing up to arriving at UTA for a minute, because you mentioned that, how did you end up at UTA? What's the backstory on that?
Basketball. Basketball was a backstory.
Okay.
So I picked up the sport in 04, and I progressed really quickly. So by 06, I had a good friend of mine that we played together. We got hooked up in San Antonio, and he had explained, and I knew of the sport. I've been doing it recreationally, like once, twice a week, and then sometimes, and at first I would come out one day, and I got bored with it, and I stopped, and then I came back again. I wasn't super passionate about it like I am now. So he said he was going to move up to Arlington to go to the university, and my background in sports from high school was that there had to be a tryout period, and I didn't think I was good enough, so I was just going to wait. So I got better with that team in San Antonio, played with them for many years. Eventually, when my wife graduated, so we both had graduated, got our associates. She did culinary and pastry arts, so she was a baker and a chef, at least through, her, for school,
Right.
So she worked at a bakery, and eventually she got approached by an uncle, and he was in Florida, and he had a deli, and he was really struggling with it, and we weren't doing anything, and he asked for a favor. So we decided to uproot from San Antonio, move the family to Florida, and we did that for about almost 2 years, from like 08 to like 2010-ish time period. But during that period, I was still competing, and I was still with San Antonio for like a season and a half after I left them, but we were just working out in some weird remote thing where I would just go to certain tournaments or I'll see at nationals. So one year I got at nationals, I ran into Coach Doug Gardner, coaching with the Mavs, and I just went and asked him if he thought he could use me. He's like, sure. So I came to UTA and been here since.
Since when? What?
2010. 2010, so summer 2010 was when we first moved out here, and I've been at UTA since fall 2010.
So the basketball was your rehab initially,
Mm-hmm.
and then this built into your participating in an organized way.
Yeah,
Who was the team in San Antonio then? Or,
the Spurs.
okay, so this is connected to the professional basketball team, the Spurs, or
Yes.
okay,
Yeah. And the league in general, it's has several clubs that have or are tied to the NBA teams.
Mhm.
Some of the programs, they get more assistance, more aid, from their sport clubs. Some get less, some get just the permission to wear the name and the jersey.
right.
And that's how far the assistance goes from there. But yeah, I was with the Spurs for about 5 years, and eventually I came here to UTA.
And that's when you met the coach and came here to UTA.
Yeah.
So you got here to UTA. What major did you decide to? Obviously, you were going to have to go to school. What major did you decide on?
Advertising. So early on, when I was in doing my associates, I wanted to do broadcasting, and then it turned into general communications associates. And then when I got to UTA, it was still sort of broadcasting, but then at some point, I guess it shifted to advertising. So I did that, and then I've always been interested in history, so I had a bunch of history credits, and I'm only a couple away from doing the minor, so I did a history minor. Yeah, I was all over the place, but luckily enough for me, I've been blessed with not having had to have paid for school, and
Right.
school not being difficult for me. So
Right.
it was just a matter of me being interested in the topic or field of study, and then just diving into that. So my eligibility, because I came in as a transfer, I got my bachelor's pretty quickly, so I still had you get 5 years of eligibility as an athlete or adaptive athlete. So it's one more year than the regular athlete scholarships or their eligibility periods. So I still had time left, so I just ended up. I picked up. I went history major, so I kind of double majored. I picked up a disability studies minor and an English minor because it's one of those things where I just need 1 or 2 more classes. I might as well. And then eventually I smartened up and got my master's in communication. But I pumped the brakes on my education. I don't think I'm going to go past that. I'm content.
You're content with where you're at?
Yeah.
So, since you brought it up, you said you hit one bad grade at UTA.
Stats.
Okay.
I'm a words guy, not a numbers guy.
Right.
I don't do well. It's not that I can't do well. I just never had the drive to really try at it. So yeah, I didn't do well in stats. No.
Yeah, I think most history majors we're like that.
Yeah.
It's, we're not numbers people. So, what other challenges has your injury created for you, and how have you dealt with those challenges?
I don't know. I've always, like I said before, I've always really focused on the positive aspects of and the opportunities that my injury has brought me, and really not focused on those negatives.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit of a hypochondriac, so that's where all my stresses and my worries go is a different mole, or I can hear my heartbeat, am I dying? So I don't worry about what I can't do in regards to that, because I've been really lucky, and the opportunities that have come my way because of the injury. You know, I've traveled many places around the world. I've seen most of the states. You know, I've met so many different people that have come from so many different. My perspectives are just very broad because I know people that have done more with less. So I don't worry about so much. I understand there's a difference, you know, like with what, you know, somebody that's an able-bodied versus what I can do. I don't worry about it too much. If I have to take the long way around to go to an elevator or to a ramp, it's not that big a deal because we're still going to the same place. Yeah.
So are you involved in any advocacy groups for disabilities?
I'm not. I do it more as just individually speaking to anybody that I see might have a need. Because I'm a vet, because I have that access to the VA and they allow me to get new equipment. They very much, a lot more often than somebody that has no insurance or is not military connected. So I've been injured for 2003, so going on 20 years.
Yeah.
And during those 20 years, I've probably had a dozen everyday chairs, you know, your daily rider, and then a lot of sports chairs. So the way I've done my part is by not hoarding or not asking somebody to buy something from me. It's like, if I get a new one, I'm going to give you my old one. So, I mean, just since I've been here in UTA since 2010, there's probably 3 or 4 guys that I've just, you know, given me like their hand-me-downs, which is like a chair that they probably could never afford or something. So
I see.
I do that. I think I've donated some of my sports chairs to, you know, organizations in Africa that are starting groups there, starting, you know, programs there. So I'm like, I don't have use for this equipment. It's a very expensive sport to get into. And it's a very expensive situation we find ourselves in if your insurance is not able to cover your needs for somebody in a wheelchair. And that's besides the sport thing. If you decide you want to participate in a sport, a basketball chair costs $3,500, probably an average one. If you want to do hand cycling, that's probably a $10,000 bill.
Wow.
It's very expensive equipment. So if you can offer somebody the opportunity to get involved with it by giving them something that you don't need, then I feel that's how I do my advocacy and stuff like that.
So going back to the Moving Mavs for a moment, are you still an active player?
I actively play for the community team, which is Dallas Mavericks.
Okay.
It's been fun because they've been a super successful team, like a dynasty. They probably, over the last 25 years, they've won 17 championships.
Oh my.
If not more. It's a crazy ratio. This area has produced a lot of winners in the wheelchair basketball community. I always said I wouldn't play for them.
Oh really?
It's like playing for the Yankees or something like that, right? If you're grew up in Kansas or something like that, you know, you're like, I would never join the dark side.
Right.
It became it was just a convenience for me. You know, I was here. They still have to sign off on you playing for a different team that's outside your geographical, your hometown, wherever it is you live. So if I did want to go back and play with my old buddies in San Antonio, I'd have to get okays from Dallas, the Dallas team. I'd have to get signed off from. There's a team in Austin, so there's like,
wow.
I can't just go there as a free agent. You know, the league doesn't just allow people to do that. But.
Right. And you're an assistant coach with the Moving Mavs?
I've been assistant since I graduated. 2015. So
and the national championship moving maps. Is that?
Correct. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Since I've been the assistant, and I'm not going to give myself the credit, but I have been on the staff of 3 championship teams and a 4th one that should have won, but COVID ended up closing and shutting that season down. So they're not easy to win. You know, I spent 5 years here, and we went to 2 championship games, and we were unfortunately we weren't able to win. So I understand how difficult it can be to win one, much less back to back like this latest group won. So hats off to them.
Yeah, and this is not a paid position for you. This is a volunteer position. Is that correct?
This is a volunteer position. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but there are paid positions.
There are paid positions. Yeah, there's 12 teams in the league. I had been approached many times, or not many, I would say several times, by startups and with the opportunity to go. I just and going back to the advice I gave you, is like, this is my home. I want to try to make it work here. I don't wish any ill will or anything on negative about Coach Doug Gardner. He's given me plenty of opportunities. I just hopefully one day in the budget, there's going to be room for me where I can join and provide whatever it is that I can impart on the players that is going to help us continue on being successful.
Right. Did you experience or have you experienced any discrimination based on your use of the wheelchair? Do you feel like that has hindered you in any way?
No. I think the biggest thing would be and if you've taken courses with Dr. Rose, I'm sure she talks about the stare, and how that's not so much a discrimination. It's just, the gaze of because you're different, So, and it's not always. I wouldn't say. I don't want to speak to the people that are staring. Little kids, they'll point and ask, and sometimes I'll stop and let them know what happened. Kids, they have no filters.
Right.
If I'm doing something that somebody thinks I shouldn't be doing, and they'll stop to shake my hand or give me props. I'm like, I didn't, you're an inspiration, or good for you. I take those type of comments and just keep going with it. I just I don't let them bug me. It's
because you don't see yourself as
I don't. It's
an
just,
inspiration.
it's my normal. Yeah.
Yes, right.
And for me, it's not inspirational. It's just, I'm pushing a shopping cart around. I'm loading up my truck with wood from Home Depot. Like, thanks for the offer to help me load it, but yeah.
So where do you see yourself 5 years from now? What do you see yourself doing 5 years from now?
Something different. I'll keep it vague. I don't want to. I don't like to make plans. I like to live. I don't want to say be corny day to day or day by day. I'm always open to change. But the only thing I have committed to is my wife and my daughter. So anything that's not that, I'm fine with changing my situation. I do have a passion for sports and adaptive sports, and I do want to be here. If an opportunity came where I wasn't going to be here anymore to be doing something else, fine. But I do lean heavily towards that being my lifelong or my long-term plans is doing something like that, getting paid to coach and do something I love. But I have no idea 5 years from now where my opportunities might take me.
Right. Now tell me about your daughter. Your daughter is here at UTA as well, is that correct?
She is. She's, I believe, going on her junior year.
Wow.
COVID's been really weird, so she studies architectural engineering. So we're going on our 4th house. We've done a lot of rehabs to homes. So not so much flipping, but we end up living there, and then a new opportunity comes around, and the market shifts, and
Yeah.
you can get a lot more money for your house.
All right.
So we end up doing things like that, and we started off with the small house, and we got a nice little property now that fits us. And I say we're never going to move again, but you never know.
Right.
So I think maybe she got that itch to do something with architecture, or through our experiences with all these houses. So we'll see how it goes for her.
And right here at home and at UTA, right?
Yeah, correct.
What advice do you have for others who are experiencing similar challenges, whether they be physical challenges or emotional challenges? What advice do you have for other people?
Surround yourself with others that would be in similar situations, maybe not necessarily the same. Draw from their experiences, get some different perspective about the good and the bad. People that haven't been through your situation, whatever it may be, aren't going to be able to give you that advice that's really going to hit home and make you change your behavior. So that would be my advice.
And is there anything that you would like to add to this interview that we haven't covered?
No, thank you.
Well, thank you for participating. We certainly appreciate it, and thank you for your service. I'm sure you get that a lot. And thank you for your service to UTA. You meant something to me in my undergraduate years as an undergraduate advisor, and so thank you for that as well. It's been a pleasure interviewing you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you.